Welcome back to the Math Eye. The Warriors trail Parkside 36-31. Joe Abramson along with Wayne State softball coach Gary Bryce. And, well, we could spend the entire half just going through the resume. So let's just go through a couple highlights. Your 38th year as the head coach of the Warriors. All-time winningest coach in the history of Division II and number 8 in the history of all of NCAA college softball. Other than that, not a whole lot going on, but this season you guys are already got off to a start. It's cold outside, but you went down south already.
Yeah, we went down to Florida, played in a Division II Classic, was 3-2. Did some really good things. Could have done some better things in a couple of the games, but hopefully our motto this year is pride. Bring back the pride, and the kids have kind of bought into that, and that's really helped us, I thought.
You know, you talk about bringing back the pride. You had the rare losing season last year, but there were 10 games that you lost by 1 run. But boy, all of a sudden you're picked to finish 7th this year in the GLIAC. This is that rare time when you can try to surprise some people.
Well, I certainly hope so. I mean, we're not used to being 7th, but again, that's a motivation factor. You know, when you've been on top for a long time. We have a lot of new people, new coaches in the league, and I don't blame them. I probably would have put us 7th too after last year.
Now you've got a couple more trips. You go back to Florida, but you also go to Chicago where there is an indoor facility. You do that every year.
We have done that about the last 5 years. That's where the Bandits play, the pro team, and it's a 2-field inside facility, and it's a good tournament.
Talk about something that maybe all the people out there don't realize. You're not just the winningest softball coach here. You're the 3rd winningest coach in the history of the women's basketball program. Let's talk about that.
Well, when I came here, I came as a softball coach, and they needed a basketball coach. And I've coached a lot of things, and the one thing I can say about basketball is that back then we had 5 rides, and I got with some of the women on the Board of Governors, and at the end of my career, we got it up to 10 where it was supposed to be, and that's probably my good point in terms of the basketball program.
You've got a lot of coaching background, like you said, different sports. You've got some football background, there's some wrestling, you've got a pretty varied career, haven't you?
Well, I played football in Michigan, and then I coached football for 20 years, and coached 13 years of wrestling, and about a month of cross country, God help me. They hired a coach, you know, and several years in basketball, so I've been a little diversified.
What is it about softball that made it the sport you stuck with?
Well, I was teaching in high school and back in early 70s, and there were no women's sports. And so women's sports came into the state of Michigan about early 70s, 71, 72. And the women phys ed teachers never went to college to coach. They really went to teach phys ed, and I was teaching history, but I was playing big time softball. So I needed a softball coach, so I ended up coaching at Royal Oak Dondero for 5 years, and then they offered me the job at Wayne State, and I've been here ever since.
There was a state title while you were at Dondero.
I was fortunate to win a state title. Actually, 3 of those players went on to play for the University of Michigan, so we were pretty decent.
I'm going to ask you something about this state, because you assume that in sports like baseball and softball that all of the success is down south or out west, but you're the 8th winningest coach in the history of all divisions, and the #1 coach is Carol Hutchins up at Michigan. So what is it that makes softball successful in this state when the weather isn't conducive to it?
Well, I think one, coaching. Hutch done a great job. Central coach Marco Junker's done a tremendous job. And I've had great assistants. Ken Smith with me for 38 years, 2 as a player, and Nicole Tynes has been with me 10 years. And anytime you keep your coaching staff together, you have a chance to be successful, and that's one thing Carol's done. You know, she's kept her coaching staff together for a long time.
And you've had your coaching staff, at least one of them. I know you've got a well, actually 2 former players, but one who's been with you forever.
Yeah.
And Pat has made a huge impact on this program as well.
She has. I mean, yeah, I'd be the first one to tell you win it with your assistants, and and I tell them I'm at the top of the cup, but I wouldn't be there without them, and they do a heck of a job, and I really appreciate them.
Last question for this season. It's early, you're 3-2. It's hard to tell what's going on with this team right now, but what do you need to see when you go to Chicago and when you go back to Florida to make you think, all right, we're on the right track to get back where we belong in the GLIAC?
Well, it comes down to pitching, and we have freshman pitcher Paige Emil from Marysville, and Megan Qatar is back throwing and throwing well, and we have a couple other kids. If our pitchers can hold us in and we can play good defense, last year we did not play good defense. And when you don't do that, you don't help your pitchers at all. And when you had, a couple years ago, we had the National Player of the Year, and when you can average 10 strikeouts a game, you only have to make 11 plays in the field. When you don't average 3 strikeouts a game, you got to make 18 or 19 plays in the field. And last year, we didn't do that.
Well, nobody told me there was going to be any math, Coach. Hey, best of luck. Thank you so much for your time. Best of luck this season.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
We'll be right back.